This is maybe the weirdest way to wrap up Cartoon Crisis after so many episodes being reviewed in the span of this month. Well, by the time of this recording, I've recorded a few videos, but still. But at the same time, instead of just reviewing a terrible episode from a very awful show 3 years ago, I'm gonna be doing an analysis video of SpongeBob's Jellyfish Hunter and Ink Lemonade, since some people say that this episode isn't really similar to Jellyfish Hunter, but I'm gonna completely go into greater detail once I actually get to Jellyfish Hunter. So as you can tell, by the time when you saw my schedule of this month, you'll probably be surprised that I'm reviewing a episode from the post-sequel era. Well, if you can tell, I'm really not interested in SpongeBob anymore, and after watching a few episodes, mainly this one, I really gotta tell that this episode is the prime example that SpongeBob shouldn't continue. I know it's a bit harsh, but at the same time, when you really think about it and how SpongeBob is still going on for this long, and the fact that there's already a third movie on the way, that really shows a lot. Not to mention the Camp Cola and the Patrick Show possibly happening. Jeez, it really goes to show that Nickelodeon has gotten worse and worse when SpongeBob is still on the air. Anyway, this episode begins with Patrick about to sell lemonade, and he's being extremely stupid and over the top. And when Squidward comes out, he completely told Patrick that he doesn't have any lemonade whatsoever. And believe me when I say this, is that this is the point where everything that I've seen in this episode just shows that the entire post-movie era only sole purpose of existing is to have SpongeBob not be what he used to be in the post-movie era, but at the same time, it makes this episode a lot more pointless for how the characters interact. And if some people are going to say that, well, the voice actors and artists has been doing this for nearly 20 years by the time this episode aired, so you pretty much should expect that they cannot top at anything of what they did in the past. I understand what you mean, but for what this episode does, there's always a limit that they always have to pass no matter what. Or a line. So anyway, when Squidward completely give Patrick a lemon, he completely uses it to put the lemonade in the cup, and oh my god! Seriously. Does anyone actually think that this was okay to begin with? Seriously. I get that some cartoons can sometimes be gross and disgusting, but at the same time, this is overboard. And not only that, when Patrick causes more noise, it completely causes Squidward to overreact and completely trip with the nose hair thing or something in his nose. And then when one of Patrick's customers drink it, he completely throws up because of how disgusting it is inside of Squidward's house, which is uncalled for and meaningless, especially that Patrick told him to throw up there. And not only that, we reach to the portion of what makes this episode difficult to handle, and that's Squidward completely squirting ink out of him whenever he gets scared. Yeah. This is the first time where we get to see Squidward inking lemonade out of his body, and when SpongeBob drinks it, he does this because of how terrible it is. But he still thinks that it's good. Okay, I think I should stop talking about this episode for now. I'm gonna talk about the Jellyfish Hunter now. Now, you may say that I'm really confusing you onto why this episode has some kind of a comparison to Ink Lemonade, but when you really think about it, they actually think of a way to have jellyfish harvest jelly inside them. Since that jellyfishes is the equivalent of bees in underwater, I really think of what they're doing in this episode really makes sense, is that jellyfishes, well, are jellyfishes. And they can swallow jelly, so that actually kind of makes sense. And as much as people say that that's disgusting and not completely, mixed with proper ingredients to make it taste good, but at the same time, it's a lot better than having ink lemonade from a squid. And when SpongeBob heads to work while having lunchtime, he completely loses the jelly and then eats it, which causes the attention from one of the customers at the Krusty Krab. And because of how delicious it is, he sings a song which was good from my point of view. And with people completely enjoying the sandwich so much, it causes the attention from Mr. Krabs so that he can get more money from other customers. Now, usually this is mainly Mr. Krabs being extremely greedy, but at the same time, this is one of the earlier seasons from the show before the movie. And Mr. Krabs wasn't completely philanthropized and completely selfish. His motivations in this is just trying to have SpongeBob capture so many jellyfishes as possible so that he can have his business sell jelly Krabby Patties. Now, as much as people may say that this is mostly confusing and the fact that the plot isn't completely similar to Ink Lemonade, well, here's the biggest difference with this. Unlike in Ink Lemonade, the characters actually speak in sentences and not acting completely goofy and over the top. While in Ink Lemonade, they're so over the top that sometimes I just don't understand how people would still enjoy the post-movie era if the characters still don't act from those season 1 through 3 counterparts. And when we get back to Ink Lemonade, it honestly tries way too hard to actually be as over the top as possible, but at the same time, it just becomes really frustrating and hard to take this episode seriously. Seriously, this image of one of the citizens of the Bikini Bottom drinking Ink Lemonade and making these reactions, that is over the top and just hammering in. Not only that, it somehow is considered good. In do you ever see an episode where it has this similar part where people are just drinking something or eating something that is considered terrible, but at the end they still consider great? Because if that actually happens, then they honestly miss the point onto how those episodes fail miserably. I'm not trying to actually be rude to this episode, but at the same time, the logic in this is honestly hammered in, because Patrick needs more Ink Lemonade in order to sell more money for his Ink Lemonade stand. And by doing this is by scaling Squidward so many times. It's not even hilarious. This is a Squidward torture porn, but it's done for one of the fearful reasons that it's honestly unbelievable that the post-movie era never did something like this. Seriously. In this episode, Squidward, while being rude at the beginning, acts completely normal and calm for the majority of this episode, until Patrick just decides to scale him for Ink Lemonade. Seriously. He's completely doing this just to scale Squidward so they could get Ink Lemonade. And at the same time, I honestly think that what they're trying to do in this episode is honestly just having someone uses someone else's liquid and using it to sell it off. That's not clever. In fact, it's actually kind of disgusting. People may say that squirting jelly from jellyfish is disgusting, but you gotta understand that, at least in that episode, jellyfishes are not human people in underwater. They're just basically animals that are just like animals. They're not like SpongeBob, who's an animal but still talks like a human. They're just animals who are completely just doing this stuff because they're jellyfishes. And at this point, just seeing bits of Patrick just completely torturing Squidward isn't hilarious. As a matter of fact, it honestly makes you really depressed that Squidward is feeling this. I know, now can you actually see onto why this episode is similar to Jellyfish Hunter? Other than the fact that it doesn't involve the characters capturing many other creatures and put them into a factory. It's just basically selling off of something, if it's jelly or liquid, for something that they could get money off of. Patrick is playing the role of Mr. Krabs in this episode. And Squidward is playing the role of jellyfishes in Jellyfish Hunter. And Spongebob barely does anything in this episode because he's over the top and goofy like Patrick. I honestly think that everything in this episode is honestly hammered in. And when you actually completely look at how psychotic it is and just hammering in, then I honestly think that this episode really goes to show that the post-movie era didn't need to happen. Now look, I get that the post-movie era has good episodes, but at the same time it also has bad episodes. So I'm not the only one who actually thinks that this episode can be the only episode that can make this entire show, the post-movie era, tolerable to take it seriously. Getting back to Jellyfish Hunter, Mr. Krabs wants SpongeBob to catch as many jellyfishes as possible. And unlike in Ink Lemonade, well, Patrick just completely used the same squid in order to get the ink lemonade, I honestly think that this motivation of SpongeBob getting the jellyfishes actually works, since that jellyfishes can easily be worn out from jelly. And it really shows once you see the factory in this episode. And besides, I honestly think that Mr. Krabs' motivations in this episode is mostly understandable. Granted, what you're going to see at the end of the episode, we'll probably see the true side of him, but it's not the side of him that you see in the post-movie era and the sequel era, in the post-sequel era. All I can say is that the episode of seeing SpongeBob just trying to capture as many jellyfishes is actually kind of entertaining and also goofy and unique. And when the jellyfishes are completely extinct at Jellyfish Fields, SpongeBob is completely done, while also having No Name, the blue jellyfish, in this episode. Now, No Name was a jellyfish that appeared in the beginning of this episode, what SpongeBob is trying to catch. But unfortunately, no matter what he does, he just can't catch him. And this is pretty much this is another plus from this episode, since that it knows how to handle its pacing and has enough time to handle how to put these characters into these situations while trying to capture a jellyfish, and also making these scenes a lot more entertaining. Seriously. With this episode having this amount of time to have SpongeBob catching a jellyfish, you know that that's considered a good plus when it comes to having this episode a perfect 11-minute episode than what Ink Lemonade was. I get it. This episode is old and Ink Lemonade is 2 years old. But at the same time, when a show keeps going on for this long, I honestly think that the pacing is honestly the biggest issue, because they don't know how to handle the 11-minute time limit for each episode to fit in. And besides, once we get back to Squidward and how he's dealing with all this, he's completely come across the Krusty Krab. Well, he completely sees that he's gonna have a dead-end job for the rest of his life with this. I have no idea how Squidward didn't go to a hospital after all this, and the fact that he has limited supply of ink lemonade, but this is just sad. This is just really horrifying and depressing to look at. And then when Squidward completely sees that there's a huge line selling ink lemonade, how is this possible? I honestly don't know how any of this is possible. I don't care if this is a cartoon. This is pushing the limits of the logic in cartoons on selling someone else's liquids from other bodies and selling them. Seriously, how did anyone not question about Patrick's ink lemonade stand and the fact that he's selling ink lemonade and how it tastes terribly? Whatever. Anyway, Squidward decides to sell his own ink lemonade, but unfortunately he can't because he has to completely get scaled in order to get the ink lemonade out of him. I honestly think that Theo is literally the only thing to actually scale him, or reactions, but I honestly think that having Squidward just completely using the ink out of his system just for this episode is honestly really pointless since it's never been used before and it's never been used again. And when we completely see Squidward just squirting out the ink all over the townspeople, they well that the ink lemonade is terrible and they completely throw up in Squidward's house. Do you see how over the top this is? And as for the ending, it's just meaningless and rushed since that SpongeBob and Patrick are selling cookies instead of ink lemonade. And we see the final timer where Squidward just does another reaction and link lemonade from his body with spirals coming out because there were spirals inside of the cookies. I honestly think that this episode instantly broke me for how chaotic it is and how it doesn't actually make things right for anything, in the fact that it also steals the same idea from Jellyfish Hunter. Getting back to Jellyfish Hunter, since that all the jellyfishes are gone, SpongeBob is concerned that during the middle of the night, he feels like someone wants to sell him something, but apparently it wasn't. By the way, that joke was probably the best jokes I've seen from Season 2. And then, when he heads home, he gets a voice or breathing sound from No Name. I'm gonna call him No Name because, as far as I'm concerned, calling him Blue Jellyfish isn't really a good name, to be quite honest. And when he completely cut out the power in SpongeBob's house, he completely sneaks into the kitchen and also putting blue jelly inside one of the Krabby Patties, which surprises SpongeBob. And No Name completely takes SpongeBob to a factory. I honestly think that this pairing between SpongeBob and No Name is actually kind of good, since that No Name is one of the most difficult jellyfishes for SpongeBob to capture, even if it's mainly a sport to him. And then when No Name completely takes SpongeBob to the factory, we get to see what Mr. Krabs is truly doing. Now, usually, I can easily see this as terrible and just animal or insect abuse to the jellyfishes, but at the same time, you can really tell that there were other factories that did this before, and this actually takes it to a realistic setting. Unlike in Ink Lemonade, while Patrick's only factory is to get the ink out of Squidward, there's so many jellyfishes in this that, yeah, it really goes to show that Mr. Krabs really needs this many jellyfishes in order to make more jellyfish jam. And like I mentioned before, the jellyfishes get worn out after completely using all the jelly inside of their bodies or something. As far as I'm concerned, as much as this factory is just really painful to watch when it comes to the jellyfishes dealing with this, you can actually watch this over than what we saw in Ink Lemonade. And then when SpongeBob tries to confront Mr. Krabs on trying to release the jellyfishes, he completely denies because the door on the jellyfish container, whatever you call it, will only open if he says open, which he accidentally did, causing all the jellyfishes to set free from the factory. And one of my favorite lines is freedom from SpongeBob. Seriously, these one-liners are way much more better than what the post-movie and post-sequel movie era did. I know that there are other quotes that they did that people may consider entertaining, but at the same time, it doesn't excuse how terrible and miserable those episodes are. So anyway, when all the jellyfish are released, these have Mr. Krabs, and they flee from the out of the factory, living their normal lives at Jellyfish Fields, while having Mr. Krabs taking jelly off the menu. I really think that this episode really makes me appreciate what the original show can do, and the fact that what they can do when it comes to ideas by having jellyfish swirling jelly. I know some people don't usually review these episodes when it comes to how old they are, but at the same time, this episode, the more you watch it, and after watching Ink Lemonade and took time on thinking about it, this episode actually make me appreciate what the old episodes do, even if I don't watch those episodes anymore. And I honestly think that what they did in this is honestly a lot more better than what they did in the post-sequel era, or should I say Ink Lemonade. Because in Ink Lemonade, the characters are just so over the top and so juvenile that they treat the audience so tolerable that it's just hard to actually admire the plot of this episode. Besides, I understand that this show is for kids, but at the same time, if kids are going to look at three different sides of characters, and I do say three sides of the Spongebob from the earlier years, the Spongebob after the movie, and the Spongebob from this, it's honestly really depressing, especially that this is the second time that they change SpongeBob and the other characters' personalities. Not all of them, but it's really actually depressing to actually see these characters don't act like they originally were in the earlier seasons. I know some people are going to come out on a limb and say that you should judge the post-sequel era since they didn't watch multiple episodes. I do, but for someone who's getting sick of watching this constantly and wants to move on to different things, then I honestly think that that's something that you should probably do, because I get that SpongeBob isn't meant for taking itself seriously, and I can understand that it's mainly for comedy and entertainment. But if it's still going to do that, they should have done something what Jellyfish Hunter did. Because at least in that episode in the earlier seasons, the characters were actually somewhat redeemable, and you can actually root for them in some other way. But as far as I'm concerned, as much as this post-sequel era isn't as bad as the post-movie era, I still don't find any kind of reason to have it exist. Especially since that after everything I've went through for this month and have to actually watch these episodes, this episode was easily the one that I have mixed feelings on making a review of. So that's why I had to compare it to an older episode so I can actually give my points on why the post-sequel era didn't need to exist. If it's only to do a redemption of the post-movie era, then that's really not saying much, since the post-movie era did so much terrible things with no awareness whatsoever. And if Nickelodeon is completely continuing with this while making a movie, doing the Camp Cola spin-off, and completely doing a Patrick Star spin-off series, then that really goes to show that Nickelodeon cannot survive without SpongeBob. If they don't have SpongeBob with them, they will easily be completely out of business. And that's why SpongeBob is still continuing on, because they really don't know how to make another franchise as popular as SpongeBob. The Rugrats was a different story, but with this, cheers. It's one thing that this is the longest Nicktoon of all time, but I honestly wonder what it felt like if this show never continued in an alternative universe. But I think I'm really delaying this video much longer. All I can say is that as much as you really have mixed opinions on this episode, if it's considered good or bad, you cannot deny that it at least did an interesting concept and actually did the pacing a lot more better. Other than just having the pacing in Ink Lemonade of having Patrick completely scaling Squidward so many times to the point that Squidward might faint from using the liquids inside of his body. As far as I'm concerned, I really cannot stand how this episode really that much. And I honestly think that this is really a way for me to wrap up Cartoon Crisis 2. As far as I'm concerned, I honestly think that for anyone who's going to be concerned on me reviewing post-sequel episodes from this, I might think about it on reviewing the episodes that I consider good, but at the same time, don't expect me to do a positive review on them. As far as I'm concerned, they really don't deserve a positive review from me after watching Goons on the Moon and watching the 20th anniversary episode of SpongeBob, which is SpongeBob's 20th birthday or 10th birthday or something, or SpongeBob's birthday episode, or whatever you call it. I give Ink Lemonade a 1.5 out of 10. Yeah, that's how low I cannot stand this episode. And as for Jellyfish Hunter, I give it a 7.75 out of 10. I know it's honestly odd to rank a good episode in Cartoon Crisis 2, but I really need to use this episode to give it comparisons to Ink Lemonade. So anyway, that's basically everything I have to offer for Cartoon Crisis 2. A really long month and difficult to do all these reviews with nothing more, but at least it's over with, and if I'm going to do this next time, I can guarantee you that it might be less videos than what you saw this month. Anyway, there's only one more month until we reach to the new year, and that's my Christmas schedule. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm Lonely Fanboy 4 here, and I'll see you guys next time.